AITA for telling my boyfriend's parents I'm not his babysitter. His parents think I should remind him to eat and get dressed because I'm his girlfriend. I am a 23-year-old woman and have been dating my boyfriend, Josh, who is 29, for a little over 2 years now. We moved in together about 9 months ago, after dating long distance for most of our first year. It was a big step, but it felt right. We are both pretty independent people, have stable careers, and we genuinely enjoy building our life together. I work in tech and make around $110,000 a year, and Josh, who works in marketing, brings in about $70,000. Financially, we are comfortable, we split expenses proportionally to our incomes, and overall, things have been good. At least, they were good, until Josh's parents started getting involved. And when I say involved, I mean they seem to think that because Josh and I now share a home, it is somehow my job to manage his life for him. It started subtly enough. A few months ago, his mom called me while Josh was out grabbing groceries. It was casual at first. She said something like, "Oh, while you are together tonight, could you remind Josh to call the dentist about that cracked tooth?" I thought it was a little odd she was telling me, instead of him directly, but I brushed it off. Everyone forgets things sometimes, and maybe she just wanted to make sure he did not forget. Then it kept happening. The next week, she sent me a long text listing out things Josh needed to do. Remind Josh to update his passport, it expires soon, followed by, also, make sure he gets the better cat food, we do not like the brand he has been buying from Mr. Whiskers. Mr. Whiskers is Josh's cat, by the way, a giant Maine Coon who is about 10 times more spoiled than any human child I have ever met. Again, I brushed it off, though it was starting to feel strange. Josh is nearly 30 years old. He is not some clueless teenager. He has held down a full-time job, paid his rent, and kept himself alive for nearly a decade without needing someone to micromanage him. Why was I now being cast in the role of his personal secretary? The tipping point, though, came about a month ago. Josh's dad called me directly. Not Josh, me. He wanted to talk about Josh's career. Apparently, they had been discussing it as a family, and his parents had decided Josh was wasting his potential in marketing. His dad said, "You should encourage Josh to switch into a more lucrative field. Maybe finance or tech. He just is not making enough for a man his age." Now, bear in mind, Josh and I are doing perfectly fine financially. I make a high income, but even without me, Josh covers his share of our expenses and then some. We are saving for travel, contributing to retirement, and not living paycheck to paycheck. Yet somehow, his parents decided that because I make more, Josh is failing, and it was now my responsibility to steer his career like a project manager steering a team. At that moment, I realized this was not a one-off. This was a pattern. His parents genuinely saw me not as their son's partner, but as his new parent, or worse, his new handler. Up until now, I have tried to be polite. Every time one of them made a request like, make sure Josh does his taxes, or, sit with Josh and help him change his insurance plan, I would respond with something along the lines of, Josh is an adult, he can handle that on his own, or, I am confident Josh will figure it out. I thought setting that boundary calmly would be enough. It was not. If anything, they seemed to escalate. They would follow up after a few days asking if I had checked in with Josh about whatever new task they wanted done. Sometimes they would express concern, saying things like, you know how he forgets things, or, he needs a little push sometimes, he has always been that way. At first, I blamed Josh a little. Maybe he had not been managing their expectations. Maybe he was letting them believe I was okay with this. But after a few conversations, I realized Josh was not encouraging it. He would often roll his eyes when his parents texted or called, and he would say things like, just ignore them, or, they mean well but they do not know how to let go. Still, it felt like I was being put in an impossible position. If I refused to play along, I was being unsupportive. If I helped, I was enabling a dynamic that made me deeply uncomfortable. After weeks of stewing, I have decided I need to be blunt with his parents. The next time they ask me to make sure Josh does something, I am going to tell them flatly that I am not Josh's babysitter, I am his girlfriend, and that if they have concerns about him, they need to take it up with him directly. I am also going to tell them, very clearly, that their expectations of me managing Josh's life are inappropriate, disrespectful to both of us, and need to stop. I have run this plan by Josh and he is fully supportive. He told me he hates that they are dragging me into their dynamic, and he wants me to stand up for myself. Still, part of me wonders if I am being too harsh. These are people who might someday be my in-laws. I don't want to make checklists for my partner like I'm some unpaid administrative assistant. So, am I the asshole for planning to tell Josh's parents, in no uncertain terms, that I am not responsible for managing their adult son's life? Should I be handling this differently? Update 1. So, I had the conversation with Josh's parents the very next time they tried it. His mom texted me in her usual cheery, oblivious way, saying, "Could you make sure Josh packs warm clothes for the trip next weekend? He forgets sometimes." I did not even hesitate. I immediately called her. I knew if I let this slide again, it would just keep building, layer upon layer, until I was drowning under the weight of responsibilities that were never mine to carry. When she picked up, I stayed calm, but I made sure my voice was steady and firm. I told her, I am not responsible for managing Josh's life. If you have concerns, you should talk to him directly. I am his partner, not his babysitter. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear her brain scrambling to process the fact that someone was daring to push back against her carefully curated narrative. Then, after a beat, she responded in this shocked, almost wounded tone, saying, "But that's what girlfriends do. You're supposed to take care of him." It was not just surprise in her voice, it was genuine offense, like I had personally insulted her values. I held firm. I explained that taking care of someone emotionally and supporting them is a beautiful part of a relationship, but it is entirely different from acting like their parent or manager. I told her that I love Josh precisely because he is a responsible, capable adult, not because he needs to be handled like a wayward child. If they did not see him as capable, that was their own issue to work through, not mine. She did not say much after that. Just some vague mumbling about how she would think about it, and maybe they had been overstepping a little. I ended the call politely but firmly and sat there for a long moment afterwards, just letting the weight of it settle over me. It had been brewing for so long that even though it went better than I expected, it still felt exhausting. For the next 2 weeks, there was nothing. No texts. No calls. No nagging reminder lists thinly veiled as suggestions. It was eerily quiet, like they were retreating and licking their wounds, or maybe regrouping for a new strategy. At first, I was relieved. I started to relax. I allowed myself to believe that maybe the clear, strong boundary had worked. Maybe they had finally realized how out of line they had been, how inappropriate it was to treat me like Josh's executive assistant. But of course, that was naive. The calm was not acceptance. It was just the eye of the storm. Last weekend, Josh and I were invited to his mom's birthday dinner. It was supposed to be low-key, just cake, coffee, and a handful of family members gathered at their house. I told myself it would be fine. We would be in a group, there would be distractions, nothing serious would happen. I even baked a lemon cake from scratch, because I wanted to show goodwill, even after everything. When we arrived, everything seemed normal at first. His dad greeted us at the door, Josh got pulled into a conversation with his cousins about fantasy football, and I was standing in the kitchen unloading the cake when his mom came in. I thought she was just going to thank me for baking, or maybe ask me about work. Instead, she closed the door quietly behind her and pulled me aside, her hand lightly gripping my wrist like I might bolt if she did not physically anchor me. She looked at me with this wounded, pleading expression and said, almost tearfully, "If you can't help him stay on track, maybe you're not the right person for him." It landed with a thud right in my chest. Before I could even respond, she followed it up with, "We always hoped he would be with someone nurturing." It did not feel like a conversation. It felt like a job performance review, and I was being told I was failing. Not nurturing enough. Not managing enough. Not controlling enough. Not motherly enough. In her eyes, I was not just a partner who loved Josh, I was an employee who was failing at her assigned duties. Meanwhile, Josh was completely oblivious, laughing about some inside joke in the living room. I stood there, stunned, caught between wanting to scream and wanting to cry, neither of which I was going to give her the satisfaction of seeing. I did not cause a scene. I did not snap or yell. I took a slow breath, looked her directly in the eyes, and told her, in a low, even voice, that if they were measuring my worth by how well I could coddle their adult son, then perhaps they needed to rethink their expectations, not just of me, but of him as well. I did not wait for a response. I smiled, the kind of brittle, formal smile you reserve for strangers you do not trust, and walked back into the living room like nothing had happened. I complimented the decorations, chatted with his aunts, and ate the slice of cake I had made with hands that barely trembled. Later that night, when we got home, I told Josh everything. Every word, every look, every implication. He was horrified. He immediately apologized and said he would talk to them himself. He promised me that he would make it clear that this kind of treatment was unacceptable, that he would not tolerate them trying to sabotage our relationship because I refused to play their twisted little game. I appreciated it. I truly did. But deep down, I knew one conversation would not unravel decades of them seeing Josh as their helpless little boy and viewing any woman in his life as an auxiliary parent they could outsource the emotional labor to. I knew better than to believe that people who saw love as micromanagement could be changed overnight. This was not going to be a one-time boundary setting. This was not going to be a simple fix. This was going to be a long, slow, painful struggle, one where I would have to continually reinforce that I was Josh's partner, not his keeper, and that if they could not accept that, then their access to us would be limited. I needed to be ready for this to be a long-term fight for respect. Update 2. About 2 weeks after that birthday dinner, the test started. It was not even subtle. It felt almost strategic, like Josh's parents had gone home after that night and decided if they could not win me over with guilt or emotional appeals, they would try to grind me down through persistence. I suppose in their minds, if they just kept pushing, I would eventually slip back into line. The first test came on a random Thursday afternoon. Josh's mom showed up at our apartment completely unannounced. No text, no call, just her standing at the door holding a massive container of homemade soup like some weird peace offering. I let her in, because honestly, I was caught too off guard to do anything else. She smiled so sweetly, almost smugly, and said she had made the soup for Josh because he needed more hearty meals to stay strong. I thanked her politely, already feeling the tension building behind my eyes. Then, as I was putting the container into the fridge, she pulled a neatly folded piece of paper from her purse and handed it to me. It was a list. An actual printed list titled, Josh's Goals, Areas for Improvement. I unfolded it and skimmed it quickly. There were bullet points. Dentist appointment. Renew driver's license. Sign up at a new gym, because the real man stays fit and strong. She had even included suggestions for weekend volunteering opportunities so Josh could build his character. I almost laughed out loud. It was so ridiculous it crossed into parody. But instead of getting angry, I decided to meet absurdity with clarity. I walked into the living room, where Josh was playing with Mr. Whiskers, and handed him the list with a cheerful smile. I said brightly, "Here you go, babe. Your mom dropped off your to-do list." Josh blinked in confusion, glanced at the paper, and without missing a beat said, "Thanks, Mom, but I have it covered." He tossed the paper onto the coffee table like it was a piece of junk mail. His mom's face twisted slightly, like she had just bitten into something sour, but she did not say anything else. She left shortly after, hugging Josh and giving me a look that could have stripped paint off the walls. I thought, for a moment, that was the end of it. But no. That was just the opening move. A few days later, while I was at work, I got a Facebook message. Not even a normal text or email, an entire message on Facebook like it was 2009. It was long. Multiple paragraphs. She had laid out a full action plan for how I could support Josh's growth. There were suggestions for weekend schedules to keep him productive, meal plans to help him stay healthy and focused, even ideas for little notes of encouragement I could leave around the apartment. She ended it with a line that made me want to scream, "A good woman builds her man." I sat there at my desk just staring at the screen, feeling that old familiar mix of rage and disbelief bubble up. This was no longer just about Josh forgetting a dentist appointment or needing to renew his passport. This was about control. His mother did not just want Josh to live a certain way, she wanted me to become the enforcer. She wanted to deputize me into her mission to mold Josh into the man she had decided he should be. I did not respond. I did not even dignify it with a reaction. I blocked her on Facebook without a second thought. Then I texted Josh a screenshot of the message, just so he would know exactly what was happening. He called me immediately and asked if I was okay. I told him I was more annoyed than anything else. He said he fully supported me, that I had every right to block her, and that he was going to deal with it. And deal with it he did. Josh sent his mom a very short, very direct text. He told her that if she had concerns about him, she needed to bring them up with him directly, not with me. He told her that he was a grown man, perfectly capable of managing his own life, and that he did not need or want anyone, including me, micromanaging him. He said that if the boundary was not respected, there would be consequences. The fallout was immediate. That evening, his parents called him, both of them on speakerphone. Josh put it on speaker so I could hear everything from the couch. His mom was crying. His dad was yelling. They accused me of driving a wedge between Josh and the family. They said I was poisoning him against them, that I was manipulative, that I was selfish. His mom actually said, in a choked, trembling voice, that if I could not step up and be the woman Josh needs, maybe someone else would someday. It took everything in me not to burst out laughing at the sheer audacity of it. Josh was calm but firm. He told them that no one was driving any wedges except them. He told them that disrespecting his relationship was disrespecting him. He said that if they could not accept and respect the boundaries we had set, they would be the ones losing contact with him, not the other way around. There was a long, aching silence on the line after that. I could almost feel them grappling with the reality that for the first time in Josh's life, he was standing up to them, and not just standing up, but standing firm, refusing to be pulled back into their orbit of control and guilt and manipulation. And for the first time, they seemed genuinely scared. Update 3. It has been about 3 weeks now, and things are calm. Quiet, peaceful. Almost unnervingly so, considering the whirlwind that had dominated our lives just a month earlier. But after that last explosive confrontation, Josh made good on his promise. He set hard, immovable boundaries with his parents. No more polite suggestions. No more soft declines. He was clear, they were welcome to be part of our lives, but only if they treated me with respect and stopped trying to control either of us. If they crossed that line again, access to our life would end. The aftermath was tense. For a few weeks, there was only the bare minimum of contact, a couple of short texts about logistical things like a package delivery or a holiday reminder, but no real conversations. It felt heavy, like everyone was walking on a cracked sheet of ice, unsure where the breaking point might be. I tried to stay neutral during that time, focusing on my work, my hobbies, my life with Josh. I told myself that whatever happened next, I had made my peace. If his parents could not accept the new dynamic, then that was their loss. And then, surprisingly, they reached out. It was not dramatic. No grand gestures, no over-the-top shows of repentance. Josh's mom sent a text first, saying they wanted to meet up for coffee, just to talk. Josh asked me how I felt about it, and I told him it was his call. If he wanted to give them the space to apologize, I would back him up. So we met at a little cafe downtown on a rainy Saturday morning, the kind of day where the air smells like wet concrete and everything feels slightly muted. They were already there when we arrived, sitting stiffly at a corner table. I could tell from the way his mom's hands fidgeted with her coffee cup that she was nervous. And then, in a way I genuinely did not expect, they apologized. Not the weak, half-hearted apologies that leave you feeling even more bitter than before. Real ones. Josh's mom admitted outright that she had struggled with letting go of the idea of Josh as her little boy, the one she needed to manage and guide and control. She said she never intended to disrespect me, but she understood now that her actions had done exactly that. She said she saw how happy Josh was with me, how stable and content he had become, and she realized that her vision of helping was not only unnecessary but deeply damaging. Josh's dad was quieter, as always. He is not a man of many words. But he nodded firmly throughout her speech, and at the end, he said he was sorry too, in his gruff, blunt way. For him, that was huge. It was not flowery or emotional, but it was sincere. They promised to work on it, not just with words, but with actions. And, unbelievably, they have. In the weeks since that conversation, there have been no more lists dropped off at the door. No passive-aggressive texts. No Facebook essays about how to build a man. When they want to tell Josh something, they tell Josh. When they invite us somewhere, it is as a unit, not through me like a middleman. They respect my time, my role, my autonomy. Thanksgiving was the real test. They invited us over, and I was half expecting the old patterns to creep back. But from the moment we walked in, it was different. His mom greeted me with a genuine smile, not the strained politeness I had gotten used to. His dad clapped Josh on the back and handed me a beer without any snide comments about whether I was taking good care of his son. The evening was easy. There were no awkward moments where someone asked me if Josh had remembered to do his taxes, or if I had checked that he was eating enough vegetables. We were treated as equals, two adults building a life together, not a wayward man and his long-suffering babysitter. It felt natural in a way it never had before. I found myself laughing freely during dinner, teasing Josh about his terrible carving skills, exchanging stories with his cousins, feeling like I belonged. It was a long, exhausting fight to get here. There were moments along the way where I genuinely wondered if it would ever be possible, if the damage was too deeply woven into the foundation of Josh's family dynamics to be undone. And honestly, if Josh had not been so unwavering, so absolutely committed to backing me up at every step, I do not think it would have ended this well. Without his support, without him making it crystal clear that we were a team and that disrespect toward me was disrespect toward him, the boundaries would have crumbled under pressure. But they held. We held. And in the end, something even more surprising happened. Josh's parents grew too. Slowly, awkwardly, imperfectly, but genuinely. They let go. Not completely, not all at once. But enough. Enough to give us room to breathe. Enough to give us the space to build a life together that is ours alone, not an extension of their dreams or fears. The biggest lesson I took from all of this is that boundaries work, but only if you are willing to enforce them, even when it gets ugly, even when it costs you temporary peace, even when it feels easier to just give in. You have to be willing to hold the line, even if your voice shakes, even if your hands tremble. And sometimes, when you do, you find out that the people you love are capable of growing too, but only because you finally stopped enabling their bad behavior, and demanded better. Looking back now, I am proud of how we handled it. I am proud that I stood up for myself, and even prouder that Josh stood beside me, never once wavering. And more than anything, I am proud that we are building our future together, on our own terms, just the two of us.